The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter like a guillotine, the ink of his signature slicing through 25 years of marriage. I stood frozen, my coffee mug trembling in my hands, the steam curling like ghosts of promises we'd made. How could Daniel know? That single night, a quarter century ago, was a secret I'd buried so deep it barely felt like mine anymore. Yet here it was unearthed, the truth clawing its way into our lives with merciless precision. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock. Our kids, long grown and scattered across cities, weren't here to fill the void with their laughter or arguments. It was just me, staring at the legal document that declared our love a fraud. My chest tightened, a familiar ache from years of carrying guilt. But now it was laced with dread. What had I missed? What had I said in my sleep, in a moment of weakness, that led to this? I replayed the morning in my mind. Daniel had been distant for weeks, his eyes avoiding mine, his touches fleeting. I'd chalked it up to stress, his late nights at the firm, the gray creeping into his hair. But last night, as we sat across from each other at dinner, his fork paused midair, and he'd said, "Lila, do you ever think about the promises we made?" His voice was soft, but it carried an edge, like a blade wrapped in velvet. I'd laughed it off, muttering something about forever being a long time. He didn't smile. The memory sent a shiver down my spine. I set the mug down, its ceramic base clinking against the counter, and picked up the papers. The words blurred, irreconcilable differences, dissolution of marriage. But one line stood out, handwritten in Daniel's precise scrawl. "I know what you did, Lila. I've always known." My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. Always? How could he have known for 25 years and said nothing? I sank into a chair, the cushions worn from years of family dinners, movie nights, and arguments that ended in apologies. The kitchen smelled of last night's roasted chicken, a faint trace of rosemary clinging to the air. I tried to piece it together. That night, so long ago, was a mistake born of loneliness. Daniel had been traveling for work, weeks on end, leaving me in a new city with no friends, no anchor. The man, a colleague whose name I forced myself to forget, offered a fleeting warmth, a moment of being seen. It was one night, one reckless choice before we built our life, before the kids, before the house with the creaky porch swing. I'd confessed to myself in the mirror the next morning, vowing to carry the weight alone. But Daniel knew. The realization was a punch to the gut. Had he seen something in my eyes all these years? A flicker of guilt when I laughed too hard at his jokes, or when I held him a little too tightly after a fight. I thought of the moments he'd pause, staring at me as if searching for something, and I'd dismissed it as his quiet intensity. Now those moments felt like clues I'd been too blind to see. The front door creaked open, and my heart lurched. Daniel's footsteps echoed in the hallway, deliberate, heavy. I shoved the papers under a placemat, a childish instinct, as if hiding them could erase the truth. He appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face a mask of exhaustion and something darker, resolve. "Lila," he said, his voice low, like the rumble of a storm on the horizon. "We need to talk." I swallowed, my throat dry. About what? The words came out too sharp, too defensive. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the man I married. Fierce, perceptive, the one who could read my silences like a book. "Don't," he said, raising a hand. "Don't play innocent. I found the letter." My stomach dropped. The letter. A draft I'd written years ago. A confession I'd never sent, tucked in an old journal I thought I'd thrown out. I'd poured my guilt onto those pages. A catharsis I couldn't speak aloud. How had he found it? When? "Daniel, my voice cracked, and I hated how small it sounded. It was before the kids, before everything. It didn't mean anything." His laugh was bitter, a sound I'd never heard from him. "Didn't mean anything? Lila, you let me build a life on a lie. Every vow, every I love you tainted." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "I waited, you know. Waited for you to tell me. 25 years, I gave you a chance to be honest." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. "Why didn't you say something? Why let it fester?" "Because I loved you," he snapped, his voice breaking. "I thought if I gave you time, you'd trust me enough to confess. But you didn't. You let me raise our kids. build this home, all while carrying that secret like a knife in your pocket. The air felt thick, suffocating. I wanted to scream that I'd suffered too, that the guilt had eaten at me every day, but the words felt hollow. Instead, I whispered, "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't undo it," he said, turning away. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I saw the weight he'd carried, mirroring my own. "I'm done, Lila. I'm done pretending." The finality in his voice was a door slamming shut. But then he paused, his hand on the doorway, and looked back. "You know what hurts most? I forgave you years ago. I tried to. But last week, when I found that letter, I realized you never trusted me enough to let me forgive you. That's why we're here." He walked out, the front door closing with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot. I sat, stunned, the divorce papers still hidden under the placemat. The kitchen clock ticked on, indifferent. I thought of the life we'd built. The kids' first steps, the late-night talks, the way Daniel's hand fit perfectly in mine. All of it, unraveling because of one night I tried to bury. But then a colder thought crept in. He'd known for years. He'd let me believe we were whole, let me pour myself into our family, our home, only to pull the rug out now. Was this his revenge? Not the divorce, but the waiting, the slow poison of his silence? The realization chilled me. Daniel, the man who'd kissed me goodnight every evening, had played a long game, letting my guilt simmer until he chose the moment to strike. I pulled the papers out, my hands shaking. His signature stared back, a final act of control. And in that moment, I wasn't sure if I was the betrayer or the betrayed. Maybe we both were.